Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our generous patrons who kept us going for over 350 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames. Dude of the week is Francis. Thank you, Francis.
Francis, thank you. I just
just
remember that dog in Oliver and Company. You know, because Cheech Marin keeps calling him Frank, and he's like, it's Francis. Francis. He has like this big, deep, like theater voice.
Francis. See, now I'm going to say Francis all the time. Francis is a strong ass name. You got to be a strong person to have any name like Francis or, God. There's a, you know what I'm talking about though, like where it's like when you're a kid, Francis is a rough name, but then when you're an adult, everybody's like, oh yeah, Francis is a great name because Francis stands out.
Yeah, well,
I knew a kid named Chester. That's a rough name when you're a kid, but then like when you're older, like yeah, you know a guy named Chesty. That's cool as fuck name.
Is Chester a cool name? I'm sorry to all the Chesters listening, but I mean, like, is it a cool name when you're an adult?
If you're 40 and you live in the woods and your name is Chester, you're like, yeah, fuck yeah. Or you're 40 and you work with your hands or whatever. Chester's a cool fucking name.
You're not
if
making
you're
this
12,
easy.
If you're 12 and you're playing on the schoolyard, Chester's a rough fucking name, is all I'm saying.
I think Chester's a rough fucking name being an adult and walking near a school.
Nah, get the fuck out of here. Chester's not a pedo name.
You're trolling me.
Anyway.
I'm being trolled. I'm being trolled live.
We have a sponsor. It's the perfect time of year. Things are finally cooling down. Last night it was cold enough that my dog wanted to slump against me and sleep.
It was kind of funny where we live. It literally went from one day it was 90 to the next it was like 68, 69.
Yeah.
It literally just went
winter.
It literally just went, all right, I'm done with summer. And then fall in one day. We literally just 24 hours just shifted.
Right. And then next week, it'll be back in the fucking 90s. And then it'll really go back into fall. And then it'll be like in the 60s for the next 3 months. And then it'll be hot as fuck. Actually, in January, there will be like a week in January where it's 90 degrees again. And then it'll go back to it's wild. But the good news is taking care of your balls, always good for the weather. And our sponsor this week is Manscaped. And their products, our favorite products by them, are perfect for taking care of your balls, like the Lawnmower 4.0. I had to charge again. I think I've only ever had to charge this like once a month. I don't know if
the charge lasts actually a very long time. I'm a pretty lazy guy, so I don't actually charge things until they're absolutely dead. And
yeah.
You know, because the thing is, I'll put it because there's a cool little thing I told you about the travel mode,
right?
Where it just locks it out, so there's no accidental turning on or whatever. And it lasts a really long time when you put the lawnmower in a charge mode. So, yeah, if you want to make a little jack-o'-lantern out of your pubic hair, lawnmower 4.0 got you covered.
We talked about shapes last time, and that's why this time I'm going to show you my pubes.
Because much like Vaseline on a pumpkin. You know, when you cover pumpkin, you got to rub it in Vaseline so it doesn't get all mossy and overgrown and get all nasty, right? So when you're done, you know, shaving your pubes down or, you know, making a nice little
dip your junk in Vaseline.
And instead of Vaseline, they have crop preserver. So keep your pumpkins nice and moist.
Now you can get the whole package, and it comes in their the performance package comes in the shed, as they call this this tote bag. But you can get the whole package. But if you're looking for just the right thing for Christmas, we can't recommend these two things, the Lawnmower 4.0 or the Crop Preserver enough. But say those two things are a little bit pricey, the Boxers 2.0, pretty friggin' excellent.
And who doesn't need a good pair of boxers?
Honestly, this is one of those weird things. Like the older you get, like, yeah, you used to just wear nothing but like the Champion brand, the 20-pack. You just grab that shit.
Yeah.
And now the older that I'm getting, I'm like, I got to take care of my balls. It's like you spend more on shoes, on boxers, and on your bed the older you get.
Yeah, you might be fine roughing it, in your young days, just fresh out of high school days. But
Anywhere the rubber meets the road, as it is.
When you get older, you're gonna really appreciate, having something that feels comfy on and around your junk.
Yeah,
Trust
this
us.
is like getting your balls held by an angel all day long.
That's right.
It's pretty nice. But if you're interested in checking out any of this stuff, please head over to manscaped.com. Use our code YoVG, all caps, for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. It's the perfect time of year to do it. That's manscaped.com. Use our code YoVG, all caps, for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. Your balls will thank you.
As they are cuddled by angels on cloud 9.
Angel cuddling.
Angel cuddling your nuts.
I don't know. Why are you always so happy? My balls are being cuddled by an angel.
Yeah.
Could be Manscaped, could be, a significant other. Who knows?
So, well, we do have that sponsor. I am going to talk about a series where canonically the main character doesn't have nuts. He doesn't have anything. He doesn't even have a gash, a tallywhacker, nothing.
What?
Yeah, so in the official art book for Breath of the Wild, they had a full link body drawing, and he just Ken doll, right? Just nothing. No pee hole, no.
Right, but that's not. They're not like. That's just for the art book because they didn't want to draw a dingus or
it's
underwear.
A little weird that you would draw a naked Link and then just decide he has nothing there.
They like. I mean, that's just so non-committal.
That's Zelda dev team.
Wow. Fair enough. I would have given him just like a honk. Like I would have given him just a third leg. You know what I mean? Just really confuse people about how he wears that tunic. Then again, that's another thing. Maybe his name's Chester and he wears tunics. Hard when you're a kid, but when you're an adult, you're a cool guy named Chester wearing a tunic and freeballing it.
I don't think anyone named Chester should be freeballing it.
Does Link I guess he wears those canvas ass pants under it because when he's a kid he just wears the fucking
he's just fucking freeballing it, but then when he's an adult he's wearing tights for some reason,
just slippers and ball sweats.
Which makes you wonder, where did he get the tights? Did someone put the tights on him? You know what? These are not questions we need to be asking.
Well, yeah, no, I mean in the Temple of Time they were like, time's passing and his balls are hanging too low for that tunic. And we don't have another tunic, but we do have these tights lying around. He's got a dancer's legs. Beautiful. So, you know what another name for that's rough when you're a kid and it's great when you're older is Woodrow.
No one has named their kid Woodrow in the last 100
years. Fuck you, I know one. I know a Woodrow.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
He legally changed it.
He's the cutest kid.
Woodrow.
Yeah.
No. Like after the president?
Yeah. Woodrow.
People on our podcast, people are gonna be like, "What the Woodrow? What the fuck is that?" Woodrow Wilson is the president during World War I.
Yeah, he's a bit of a piece of shit, actually.
Well, he was also pretty. He was pretty weak because he literally championed the League of Nations and then got fucking kicked out, or not kicked out of it. He literally didn't get invited to the League of Nations.
Yeah, he was also wildly racist. Woodrow Wilson was.
Well, of course he was.
bit of a fuck.
It was the 1910s, darling, the whole world.
But that doesn't sully the name Woodrow. Woodrow's a good, strong name. I also know a Charlene.
I just don't think I've ever heard it used outside of a history book.
That's unfortunate.
That's definitely someone going for it, with their kid. I'm going to name him something that's just sort of
yeah, it's a good, strong name.
Old and classic and, old Americana Woodrow.
I love names like that. Again, rough when you're a kid, but when you're older, fuck yeah.
He got wood.
Naming a kid named Mabel? Mabel's rough when you're a kid. But when you're older,
probably not anymore. There was a cartoon, I think, that had a character named Mabel. Gravity Falls.
That was the joke, though. That was the joke in Gravity Falls is they had old people names. Mabel was an old person's name.
Was there an Esther and a Ruth in there as well?
Oh my God, if there was. Love an Esther. Love a Ruth. I'm sorry, I sidetracked this now. Now we're talking about just names. This is a podcast about names now.
You stay away from the senior citizen community.
Fucking Argyle? Argyle is a sick name when you're older. When you're a kid,
Well, see,
Argyle,
Argyle, I recognize that name from Die Hard.
Yeah.
You're fast, Argyle. You're very fast.
Argyle's a great fucking name.
I remember there was someone who was like very intense, like many years ago during the convention scene, and they went to like I forget what they went to school for, but like I remember they were like they had this film school thing, and they were like Die Hard 1 has one of the most perfect scripts ever written.
Yeah. Yes.
Die Hard 1.
It is by the beats.
Yeah.
It is.
And I was like,
satisfying from just based on math.
They're like just everything, the way everything is set up and calculated is like perfect in that script.
It is. It follows story beats like to the fucking letter. Like you can time story beats like to the page on that thing. It's great. That's why it was a success.
Is this what do they actually talk about Die Hard 1 in film school like this? Like this is the most perfect, one of the most perfect scripts ever is Die Hard.
They'll talk about it in screenwriting. So when I went to film school, you had to pick an emphasis. Mm-hmm. And I picked screenwriting as my emphasis. So you all take your normal production classes. And then if you get like an emphasis of production, you basically get a bunch of cinematography or sound. You could choose screenwriting, production, sound, and editing / post-production as your emphasis. Yeah. And I chose screenwriting. In hindsight, I probably would have chose post-production just because I don't love post-production, but I think mostly it's because there's just so much you have to know. Yeah. Especially if you're doing it professionally. You can prosumer editing, say like what you would do for YouTube and stuff. Yes, that's technically professional editing, but like there's just this other level when you're doing it on a professional level. Like, yes, you're going to be knowledgeable about editing as like a YouTuber or even commercials to an extent. Like I would say that like people that only edit commercials, there's a whole level above that shit that like, you should talk to my buddy Geraldo at some point if you ever want to see that stuff. I'm doing that now. That's what I'm trying to get into now is assistant editing, and it's exhausting. So in hindsight, I probably would have put
anything in film production really is. So.
It really is, yeah. But in screenwriting school, the first thing you learn is very few people actually know how to tell a story, and all those people become directors. But in screenwriting school, they'll take like scripts that not necessarily like the best scripts ever made, but they'll take scripts that like really hit story beats and arcs by the numbers. And the reason why you want to do that, why you want to have like ebb and flow, and why you want to hit very specific minute points and shit like that, is that it's very satisfying on a subconscious level. So if you can do that, and that's the only thing you can do, your movie's going to be satisfying. It won't necessarily be the best thing ever. There's a movie with Tommy Lee Jones and Ashley Judd called Double Jeopardy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's not a great movie. It's fine. But it does this. It hits all these story beats, so it's a satisfying movie at the end, even though it's not a particularly memorable movie. Mm-hmm. There's all sorts of movies like that that are good, but they're not like, you're not going to win an Academy Award for it. So if you can hit those satisfying moments, and then on top of that, make the rest of your movie memorable in writing, then you're Bill Goldman, and you write The Princess Bride or Ghost in the Darkness, or a myriad of other fucking movies that win Oscars. Like he could just write an Oscar winner and know he had one, because the dude did the math and also had talent. But Die Hard is a movie that there is no wasted screen time. There's absolutely no wasted screen time. Everything that happens has to happen and just like burns through, which is also another reason why they're all like, you don't have to have these long drawn out character development arcs or like now it's very popular to do things where it's like you have 1 to 3 different types of scenes. Your scene either develops the world, develops the character, develops the plot. And if you can do all 3 in one scene, you're considered kicking ass. You're the best in your field type thing, right?
Yeah.
And so what you'll get is, if you're not dealing with like a great writer, you'll get that literally. It'll be like, here's the scene that builds the world. Here's the scene that builds the character. Now the plot's going to move forward, and they'll
And I feel like that actually happens a lot with tentpole films now. Is like there's very calculated. We're gonna have a character building moment here,
right.
so we're gonna pull back on anything happening. Like the rest of of what's going on in this movie, world wise or film wise or event wise, is just gonna stop. We're gonna have this guy talk to like this character in this house or at this table, kind of thing, and it's not really it's not moving the plot forward. It's not establishing anything new in the world. It's just we need to have a character developing moment.
Yeah, here's your character moment. Yeah. A lot of that is character moments get used as a buzzword for when you don't have anything happening. And so, for instance, a lot of Disney Plus shows right now are just movies that they decided to try and turn into 10-episode arcs.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of
Stretched
character
way
moments.
thin.
Yeah, there's a lot of character moments where there's a lot of breathing room. Now, I like breathing room when it's done well. You watch any old Western and they have loads of breathing room.
Yeah, John Ford and shit like that.
John Ford, Sergio Leone. There's breathing room. There's long sweeping shots.
That was probably something that I was very fucking familiar and eased into. Like when you showed me the Sergio Leone films.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of breathings. There's a lot of wide shots. There's a lot of, just a lot of scene moments, like scenic set like, setting the, and I'm fine with it. I'm sitting here just kind of like, because I love Miyazaki and Miyazaki loved John Ford.
Right.
So John Ford influenced this person, influenced this person. So when I get to this, I completely skipped this director my whole life. Oh, there's a lot of long drawn out. So like, I'm sitting here like I'm good to go.
Well, spaghetti westerns, Sergio Leone dealt with a lot of, he got a lot of shit because the westerns got divided into two camps after Sergio Leone. You were either in the Ford camp or you were in the Sergio Leone camp. And Sergio Leone got accused of making things, they're schlock because it's fast-paced westerns. But you look at it now, you look at his movies from the 60s, you're like, God damn, this is slow. But at the same time, all of it was like this character, and it had building because of the music and the editing. It worked really well. John Ford movies very much like had that breathing room. There wasn't a lot of like actually wasted footage.
Yeah.
That's something, just because there's breathing room shouldn't be a cover for wasted time. Mandalorian episode or season 2. But that being said, it gets used a lot as that today. And there's a book called Save the Cat. And when Save the Cat got written, it got really popular with creative executives because it made writing something that creative executives could look at, and actually everybody could judge good writing. It follows Save the Cat. It follows the story beats. It follows the, before that, your Billy Wilders and shit like that. They hit those beats and stuff, but like there wasn't like a blueprint. They did it, and that's why it was good. And you could sort of tease out why it was good, and Billy Wilder could tell you why his shit was good. But there wasn't like a book that acted like a manual for how every movie should be. And Save the Cat, which I think was written by Blake Snyder, something like that. Perfectly fine. Not shitting on that dude at all. But it became like the standard for how every movie is written.
The problem was it made the executives think they knew everything they needed to know about writing a film.
Right. The joke is in, all of Hollywood. Everyone thinks they're a writer. Everyone thinks they can write. They just, I don't have the time, or they don't acknowledge the craft of writing. And so a lot of the time, every producer you meet thinks they're a writer. Every director you meet thinks they're a writer. Every fucking, editor that you meet, not every editor, but a lot of editors will also be like, oh, I could write if I just had the time. It's just like all of those disciplines. Writing is is a craft that you have to pour a bunch of time into. One of the reasons why writing translates, like a really good writer can usually translate well to a director, is that the director is basically the person who guards the story. So a good director mixed with a good writer, or a director who is a good writer, you know, is very powerful generally, because story is a craft. And if you start in writing and move over to directing, you can learn all the symbolism. You can straight up just copy your favorite shots from other movies, because there's not
like
that many
Tarantino.
different. Tarantino, Spielberg, Scorsese, all of them steal shot styles or specific shots that they love. Because what makes a movie different isn't the shots you choose necessarily, it's the story you're telling. But I realize we're on like a way aside here, but something that I think any of those movies would say your Double Jeopardies, your Die Hards. What made Die Hard really, really good is it was a perfectly tight movie. No wasted space. The beats all move forward. There were strong characters, but you didn't have these like wasted character moments. Every scene in Die Hard is a scene that builds the world, moves the plot forward, and tells you something about the characters. Generally speaking, you'll get 2 out of 3 in every scene of that movie. But there's a lot of scenes where 3 out of 3, it tells you, you're learning something about the characters on screen. At the same time, you're learning something new about the plot. And at the same time, you're learning something about the world. And that's really hard to do. It also does another thing that is not often accomplished. It'll start a scene positive and then end the scene negative, right? If you basically want like a waveform. So if you end a scene negative, the next scene has to start negative and end positive, right? And you're causing this like roller coaster of emotions as it goes. And that seems like, oh yeah, that's obvious. Very hard to do, because if you do it and it's too contrived, it becomes obvious and you just annoy the fuck out of the audience. But if you do it right and it's not obvious, it makes you feel a deeper connection to the characters on screen, because you feel like the main character specifically is going through this roller coaster of emotions that is natural and makes sense for the world that they're in, and they're reacting how you feel you would react. Right? So John McClane is there to do the good guy thing. He's going to surprise and win over.
And then there's a lot of good stuff too, where it's just like him panicking and just like running around an empty room going, what to think, goddamn it, what am I gonna do, kind of thing. Right. And he is smart. He does smart things, like when he gives a gun to Alan Rickman, like Alan Rickman thinks he gave him a loaded gun, and he's like, what do you think? I'm fucking stupid, no bullets.
Right. Yeah, no, there's this other concept in writing called the stunning surprise. Every sequence should end with a stunning surprise that propels you into the next sequence. Also kind of hard to do, because it can just be tired as shit if everything's got to be your J.J. Abrams, but wait, there's more. But if you do it right, do it well with lots of practice, that shit becomes like a driving.
Yeah, I don't really know what you do with something like J.J. Abrams, like going forward, because like here's the thing, I don't think he's a bad director.
He's not. He's a brilliant director.
But everyone kind of thinks I'm like, oh, fucking J.J. Jar Jar Binks Abrams, because Star Wars 9 in particular, which again kind of like really misses the point of how much of a fucking studio quagmire. There's just so much to that, and it's funny because like I literally just before we started recording, I saw a blurb. I had like a headline on Twitter, like Damon Lindelof is now he's the writer with someone else, and they have a director, and they're gonna make a post episode 9 movie, and it's like the next film project going forward. And Damon Lindelof, I think he's a terrible fucking writer personally. He is one of those, he can't keep getting away with it.
The thing is,
but I think this is a good segue though to talk about gaming here, is that like Star Wars has a problem and that one of its biggest issues is that it's been around
Too
too
long.
long.
Yeah, needs to die. That's
Like,
why I'm so pissed that Andor isn't doing well. It was the perfect opening to move away from the things that Star Wars needs to die off of.
right, exactly. And there was definitely this, because what happened with Star Wars is a little bit of kind of, I feel a bit what's happening a bit with me and how I'm sort of dealing with some of my favorite franchises, where it's like it's been around forever. Everyone's nostalgic for it. Everyone has, their, the game they played when they were 5, 6, 10, whatever.
Right.
And then it starts to become like, it becomes harder and harder to like make new, like, I want to say like make new ideas or like really go at something freshly. And the thing is that it's not even about like, is this fresh or is this not fresh or blah, blah, blah. It's more just like, I think franchises don't need to exist in perpetuity.
Right. Yeah.
Like Mario can kind of do that, because at the end of the day, Mario is a stand-in for Popeye. And a lot of people are going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? No, like literally Mario and Donkey Kong is literally a stand-in for Popeye. They were supposed to make a Popeye game. Donkey Kong is Brutus, Pauline is Olive Oil, Mario is Popeye. And then because Donkey Kong was such a success, I actually got to make a Miyamoto made Popeye game for the arcades. And Bowser is now the stand-in for Donkey Kong now. But when you really boil it down, like the Mario franchise is more or less just Popeye. It's just like you're Brutus, you're Olive Oil, and you're Popeye himself. And Mario's malleable, I guess is the word. Like he can be shoved into anything: a doctor, a race car driver, tennis, golf player, basketball player.
Right, because Mario is a mascot.
Yeah, he's a mascot.
You don't know any deep lore about Mario.
Yeah, and Zelda's definitely like it's enjoyed more success now than it ever has at any point in history ever. And that's good, but it's also weird because like I'm not in love with the franchise anymore. And it's been something that's been on kind of my mind for a while. I'm like, why is that? Because I don't even think it's necessarily. And here's the crazy part. Here's the really like crazy part about all this. This isn't even about they're not making Zelda games for me anymore. I don't think it has anything to do with that, because Breath of the Wild is very different from Skyward Sword. And then if I look back at all my favorite Zelda games in particular, if they announced they were just doing like a traditional ass Zelda title, right? Like the next game was not going to be based or a follow to anything else. We're just doing like Link's Awakening, or we're just doing like Link to the Past or Ocarina of Time. We're just making one of those games, but brand new, just completely brand new. I don't even know if I would be that excited anymore.
Well, I think the reason why Zelda is having Burnout, maybe for you, and maybe for a lot of people, is because they tried to connect it lore-wise. The reason why Zelda was good is like it was always the hero of time, and yeah, you're the same. You're Link, you're generic action boy, and it's basically the same story every single time in a new world. And that works for the same reason that Mario works. It's when you try to make all these big grand connections, and then you try to make like a grand world out of Zelda. I think that it can get kind of tired, because in the end, they're going to have to basically redo the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I don't even. And I used to love the fact that they were all connected, like loosely. I actually really loved that aspect of it.
Yeah.
But it like any comic book series, eventually they have to keep writing. They have to keep writing, and they have to keep writing, and then retcons come in, and then things change, and then it just goes on too long, and then you literally end up with what I would call the Sonic 06 scenario. You had like a basic setup in Sonic 1, little bigger in Sonic 2, more lore in Sonic 3, and then you get to Sonic Adventure. Now they're talking, and now they're having cutscenes, and then Sonic Adventure 2, and then Shadow the Hedgehog, and then Sonic Heroes, and then Sonic, and then we get to Sonic 06, and it's like now he's fucking like kissing a princess of a human princess in a magical kingdom, and it's just like, what the fuck is going on here? Hold the fuck up. Like,
You've lost
hold
the
up.
plot.
Lost the plot. And Zelda kind of did that. I think kind of done that for me. And I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with continuity. I think it's more quality. I've talked about it before, but like the Zelda writing has gotten significantly worse over time. Like to the point now where like it almost feels like they just sort of like, fuck it. Like we're not going to focus on plot. We'll just have Easter eggs and we'll have little
it's
tiny
also
callbacks.
it's also gotten a lot more grandiose.
Yeah, well, now it's like a fucking, it's this giant whale, this blob creature,
Right.
of references and history and shit now. And
a perfect example of why franchises should die, or maybe not die, but why it's okay that they end, is Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2. As you play those games and love them, but as you play those games, they get more and more ridiculous.
Yeah.
They sort of just get silly. Metal Gear Solid is a sort of out there concept, like an out there idea. It's got out there characters, but it is fairly grounded. Metal Gear Solid 2 starts to get
fairly.
Metal Gear Solid 3 has out there characters again, but then like drops back and it's a little bit grounded. It's a little bit more like a, James Bond-esque spy movie. So its ridiculousness feeds into what makes it great. But it is grounded. Metal Gear Solid 4 jumps into this like hyper philosophic, brooding future war. I'm aging way too fast.
Before it gets wacky. Honestly,
it gets wild.
I think
dude's controlled by an arm. What the fuck? Which I know is supposed to be a feint, but whatever. And then 5 jumps way back in time and gets even more grandiose and sort of ridiculous and fucking. It gets all over the place. Great games, but ending at 5 for better. It turned out for better, in my opinion, because I think there was only one direction to go, which was more and more ridiculous to try and justify the game. Death Stranding could be argued to be the next follow-up, right? Like there was a good chance that the next Metal Gear Solid was going to be all about carrying some weird future baby and facing ghosts. I don't think he came up with that idea afterwards. Like, I'm so tired of Metal Gear Solid. I guess what I'll do is make this. I think what you
almost think that like this is sort of a repurposed thing I think he might have done for a Metal Gear 6. I could even see that.
I think that was his concept, his core concept for Metal Gear 6. But then he wasn't allowed to do the core gameplay aspects because he didn't want to just be said he was making another Metal Gear, but not Metal Gear. That's my own personal opinion. I don't know. There's not necessarily anything backing that. So I do think that Zelda is running into this franchise fatigue where they can only go a certain direction. It can only get, it either gets tired or it gets ridiculous.
And the thing is like I'm not out here saying that like Zelda is fatigued for the majority. Like it's gonna. No, actually, millions and millions and millions of people have just played their first Zelda game.
Right.
For the majority of owners of Zelda games, if you own one Zelda game, the majority of people who've only ever bought in one Zelda game have just bought their first Zelda game in the last 5 years. And that was Breath of the Wild. So this is the start for most people.
Right. That's cool.
Is Breath of the Wild. This is their start. And this is to me, I'm like, I don't want this to be a shitting on Breath of the Wild episode. Like I'm not here to like.
Well, I took it as you're talking about personal fatigue, not
right. Exactly.
The franchise is killing it. It's not going anywhere, guys.
Right. Exactly. And that's I just want I want to make sure that that's clear. Where it's just like
absolutely murdering it.
I fell out of love with the franchise, and it's not because like, well, I don't like the direction they're going, and I'm just, I think that's there's hints, there's a little bit of that there, absolutely. I think there's a little bit of that there, but it doesn't hold the same sway as it used to. Like personally, I think a lot of that, again, like going back to what we were saying before. I think a lot of that is just like the quality of the writing. And interestingly, like one of the things that Breath of the Wild did was bring mystery back to the franchise. Like, did you know you could do this? Whoa, did you know this was hidden there? Did you know this was? And I think, honestly, I feel like that's a huge reason for Breath of the Wild's success, is it brought that mystery back to it.
Right.
But for me,
I love Breath of the Wild.
But for me, there's things about, it's not just the mystery of, did you know you could throw a fucking log at someone, like freeze time and hit the log and it's gonna smack them in the face like Final Destination or something, or
yes,
whatever any of the other weird shit is. It's not so much about the mystery of what can you do with the physics engine. It feels like the world is a sandbox for better and for worse. Because it feels like there's about as much history to the sandbox as a sandbox, as a play structure or whatever. Like it does things I liked, which it brought back the Gerudo after a long time. We still have Zora and Gorons, and for some reason the Rito are also there, even though they're supposed to be Zoras, whatever. But that's another whole little microcosm of just sort of like, it kind of doesn't really care.
Forgot about that. Yeah,
it kind of doesn't care what it did or said about things in the past. Like and again, a big part of me is like, I really wish it was a reboot. I really wish they weren't trying to say like, it's just past everything. What timeline doesn't matter, past everything, just past everything.
Yeah, so, I do agree that if they were just like, it's a reboot,
to me, I'm like, I really wish it was just a reboot.
Timeline D.
Yeah, because then I could just like put a little bow on it and just say like, okay, here's the old Zelda games. They really fucked it up with Skyward Sword, but like, here's the old Zelda games, and they're kind of done. Here's Breath of the Wild. It's a fucking reboot. Like, that would have helped too. But getting out of the continuity thing, I don't feel like I had a reason to really care about the world or its characters in Breath of the Wild. And that's specific to Breath of the Wild, not like how does it connect to this thing or that. Nothing about that. I couldn't give less of a shit about anyone in that game because the game didn't really go way out of its way for me to give it. Like, people really loved like the fucking the bird guy with the accordion. Well, and was it Siphon or whatever, the right. Zora Prince, but they like them for horny reasons. But it's like, but it's like, here's this bird. He tells you, here's a riddle. There's a shrine here, blah, blah, blah. Like, it doesn't feel like they're really involved in the world that much. And there is a counter to this, and that's Tarrytown, which is where you build up that town and you try to get people from all over the world to move into the town. And it's wonderful. I think it's the best fucking quest line in the game. I wish more of the game was like Tarrytown,
like that,
where it's like, oh, like you this guy needs an expert for this thing, so he doesn't know where, and so you go and you look for that person. That probably, they do dumb shit where they're like, everyone's name has to end with like on or Ron or like whatever. I forget what it was. Like, there was something where everyone's name has to end in ON or something. So that was just stupid. But like the idea of just like, oh yeah, like, this person moved in, and you build up a town and you build up this little like multicultural town in the game. I thought that was really cool, and I really like that. But like, so much of like so much of the rest of the game doesn't. It feels like there's no subtlety really in the game. There's no kind of like, wow, like what is it? Like, everything is. There's a lot of Easter eggs. There's a lot of like, hey, did you notice this is like, this is that landmark, or this is the ranch from Ocarina of Time over here, and this is that shrine from Skyward Sword over here. Like,
yeah, it's a lot of member berries
or whatever. Like, member berries. It's more member berries and less sort of interesting things that are really, really happening in the world. And it's just, it's this weird thing where it's just like, I don't know what it is about that world or those characters, but nothing was memorable. Nothing like character wise, like nothing fucking happens in that story. Like,
I wonder,
it's just kind of like there's the big evil cloud in the middle, and then by the end of it, you get rid of the big evil cloud.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that is the extent of things happening in this thing. And it's like, not every game needs to have a story full of twists and turns. I absolutely understand that, and I agree with that. But we are talking about Zelda here.
Right.
You
How
know?
much of this though, or how much of your frustration, I wonder, is linked to that this Zelda is the first Zelda to come out when your full-time occupation is games.
Hmm.
And I don't like it's not that that I I don't
Yeah,
want to say
maybe.
you're jaded, but like when you're consuming and critiquing games on a level that you never did for any of the other Zelda games that came out. Like you were honest about those games. Sure, Skyward Sword's garbage pile, whatever. But like this is probably the first Zelda game that like you, I don't know, like you played so much leading up to it as for work, right?
Hmm.
And then now you've got to look at this almost in a professional capacity first, not in an enjoyment capacity first. Whereas the other Zelda games, you enjoyed them first and then probably critiqued them
I don't
after.
know if it's that necessarily. I mean, I did say originally like I'd give this game like a 9 if I was reviewing it. You know, I have a review, but
Right.
I feel like that's waned over time. Where the more I played into it, past beating it, in past or just getting because it doesn't actually you can run straight to the end if you want to if you just want to get credits.
Right.
But I'd almost say I think because I'm playing more stuff now. I honestly here's the real thing. I think because I'm playing more games, because now it's more of a job to play more games and to be more open to other things and to really be purchasing stuff. I think if anything, it's doing to me exactly what happened with me in Final Fantasy and Square Enix, where it's like the more RPGs I played, the more I kind of realized that I didn't really like anything that was just the name Square Enix on it. Like Final Fantasy VIII is to me it was like is pretty, but there's much better RPGs on the PS1 than Final Fantasy VIII, and
Right.
even 9 to an extent, and 10.
So Zelda's becoming your vanilla.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's what's happening. I think it's by becoming my vanilla, and this is going to be a broken record, but but we're talking about the same company here, right? I think Zelda's insistence on not having full voice acting, not having a full budget put into its presentation, and other games that are Nintendo first party games are. It's kind of like, why the fuck do you not like? It's a prestige franchise. Why the fuck do we still make the game like it's 1994?
Right.
Like
I
it's becoming vanilla because like it's not. It doesn't want like there's like, oh, is it a polished experience? Absolutely, but it also feels like they're also still pinching fucking pennies making this thing. Like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, they don't have voice acting because they're on a fucking N64 cartridge. But remember, they were the biggest N64 cartridges. They bragged about that, like the largest game ever on the N64.
I do
All this
think that
shit for that.
there is something to be said for Breath of the Wild. For all of the stuff that it pushed did seem to go low effort in story and in execution of the story.
Yeah.
But that being said, they didn't go low effort in the world. The world is huge. There's a lot there. They did go low effort in how they handled temples. I think they populated the world in a low effort way. A lot of the world feels empty on hindsight. But that being said, it might also just be that, like, again, you've played so many more adventure games that maybe you're just like, oh, this doesn't really like push that envelope anymore.
Yeah, and in one hand, it's like Ghost of Tsushima is one example where it's like,
Right.
I wish it had cutscenes like this and voice acting and da da da, and people will misinterpret that as me saying I want Zelda to play and have the gameplay loop. No, not that. But
I want it to be photorealistic.
Like no, but Sony spent money to make this a very like they knew it was a They knew it was a prestigious thing, so they spent the money to let you know that it's a prestigious thing, right?
Is that just not Nintendo though? Just Nintendo doesn't really do prestige.
Right. And I'm getting tired of that. I'm
Right.
really getting tired of that because they're companies that Nintendo owns that are all too willing to go prestigious on.
In an odd way, I actually, to counterbalance you, I think that's one of the best things about Nintendo is that they don't care about going prestige. I think something that is a downfall for Sony is that they leaned entirely into their prestige projects.
Mhm.
And so now they have to try and sue Microsoft so that Microsoft won't get Call of fucking Duty, you know?
Oh yeah.
And it's
Well,
like,
I
oh yeah,
mean,
because we haven't put any money into anything other than prestige projects.
right. Well, I don't think Nintendo's in any danger of everything being like this. It's just in
Right.
particular with Zelda. Zelda's your big adventure mystery,
I agree. I think
type of thing.
they could go prestige with
When
it.
you're talking about WarioWare, no, I don't care about prestige. I don't care about that in
Right.
WarioWare. I don't even. I mean, Mario's better for it. Like you could argue Mario really doesn't need it, but then you have things like Mario Galaxy or Mario Odyssey with like their full, their big voiced orchestrated soundtracks. You have these big vocal songs, and it's just kind of like, wow, Mario feels like it feels like Nintendo really fucking loves and cares about
It felt
Mario really
grand,
hard.
yeah. Galaxy
It's
feels
just like,
grand, yeah.
yeah, but then
And
you have
Odyssey.
another team in Nintendo doing new Super Mario Brothers, and it just feels like they are fucking painting by numbers here. It's just
They're
there's
just trying to get done at the end
it's
of the
just
day.
sitting there on a keyboard going wop bop 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 wop 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 like they don't fucking care.
Right.
And Mario's the franchise where it's like it doesn't matter if Mario is prestigious. It's actually nice when it is. It's nice when it does get that. But when you're talking about a game that's supposed to have a big epic story, big grandiose moments, big big everything, whatever. And it's just like, man, we still don't want to do voice acting. We still don't really want to do an orchestra for this game. We feel we did it the one time because we said we would, because we were asked about it.
Counterpoint, what if they did voice acting and the voices they picked did not match your headcanon and now everything's ruined?
You know what? I mean, that already happened with Breath of the Wild with like the 10 cutscenes it did have that were voiced. Most of them weren't great.
Fair.
To be honest, like it's just fine, but like it's weird in a way because like when the 25th anniversary hit, they had that concert tour, if you remember.
Yeah.
And I went to it when it was in LA, and it felt like, wow, like this is so great. Like they fucking love they're very proud of what they've been able to accomplish for after 25 years. Really proud of this. We're gonna have this big fucking concert. We're gonna tie it in with the next big release, franchise release. So there's sort of like this. Seemed like there's this air of like, look, like not every franchise is like this game, but we know we got something special in our hands. But yeah, like it kind of feels like the focus shifted so hard. Like they got the game was highly rated, sold good, not great with Skyward Sword. But it's interesting that they really seem to take some shit to heart with that game where people were like, wow, there's no mystery left there. It's hyper linear. Like it's way too handholdy. Like things are way too easy and obvious. I have no freedom. Like
right.
it seemed to really take them to heart. So like they really pivoted away from that and we're like, we're going to do something new and different. And this is kind of like a Nintendo thing in general where they get so fucking hyper focused on their core gimmick that it can bleed in or rather it can be to the detriment of everything else. So for when Iwata was alive, I remember how he had told, the Zelda team in Enuma that he wanted Twilight Princess to be 120% Zelda. They're like, what do you like? I don't just don't make me a game that's 100%. Make me 120%. I want it to be like extra,
the most Zelda. Yeah,
yeah. I want it to be extra. Go the extra mile. Go be above and beyond, expectations for Twilight Princess. And Breath of the Wild is absolutely a bigger game than Twilight Princess, of course. But like, it was kind of like, okay, we're not really going to go for a big orchestra anymore. We're not going to focus on story. We're not going to focus on much. We'll have some voice acting, but it's going to be in a couple cutscenes, and the rest will just be in these optional flashbacks you find. Like, we're really pivoting hard away from anything else other than just you exploring the world and dicking with the physics. Like, that's what it's about. This game is about dick with the physics. The game will kind of just we'll put some shit around it on top of it to
And
sort of like,
it is a good time in its
yeah,
defense.
absolutely. It's a good
But I do see
magical
what you're
first 20
saying.
hours where, and again, like this is getting a little bit too much on Breath of the Wild, I feel, but I mean it is like the latest game.
Yeah, and you know, with the new one coming out,
And we'll see
not Breath of
how
the
we'll
Wild
see how it
2,
feels, but
but
I'm not excited for the new game as much because like when you play like an old, even on say like Link's Awakening, Link to the Past, it was kind of a big magical part of those games was seeing how the world changed. Like just as you walk through it, when you would complete a dungeon or you complete a thing for the NPCs, the world would be different. It would change. Like Death Mountain would have the firing around it until you went into the volcano and finished that dungeon, and then like you made it peaceful again, kind of thing.
right.
um there was like you would watch things, people like in Link's Awakening, like NPCs would go to different parts of the world depending on where in the story you were. Nobody was like really that static, so to speak. Like you slowly accrued things and gave things to them through the trading sequence and stuff, so you could see this effect you were having on the world around you. And you can argue you still kind of do that in Breath of the Wild, but a lot of it is just it feels like now it's just kind of like we make this, you have this thing, but like you don't ever want to like, you don't want to get too lost. Like it's almost like they don't want people to get too lost in the sauce of, and I almost wonder if that's maybe just because the fandom is too much. If you focus too heavily on like nitty gritty stuff like that, like you lose focus of the rest of the game, or just kind of like,
Or it makes the game smaller because you're putting resources towards that.
yeah,
I
there's
do.
a lot of things there.
I think the point of Breath of the Wild was to make it as big as possible.
Yeah,
I think that was,
and I like that because like
and
half
it's
of that
open
game,
world and shit.
yeah, half of that game is what I want in a Zelda game. At least like a good half of what that game is exactly what I want for Zelda. But I think it really kind of goes back to what you said, where it's like Zelda kind of feels a little vanilla now.
Right. I Yeah, and I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. It might also just mean that like tastes are changing and desires are changing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think you're ever gonna have a bad time playing a Zelda, but at the same time, it's okay to move on. Again, lucky in the sense that most of the franchises I would have felt that way about outside of, say, Call of Duty, they ended. Right, Time Splitters is done. Metal Gear is done. So I don't have to grapple with the idea of just
You
like,
got Halo. It's not really done.
yeah, but right, I burnt out on Halo and I stopped playing around like 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, I guess Reach was probably the last one that I played. Did Reach come out after 4?
No, Reach came out before 4.
Okay, so I didn't even play 4. Reach was the last one that I played. So it's like
You ended with Bungie.
I guess, yeah, that's it. And I ended arguably with one of their best. But it's easy to, I guess, fall out of love with perpetual franchises.
Yeah.
The last Mario, while not necessarily suffering from the same thing because they usually change enough between games,
Mm-hmm.
and usually there's a pretty decent amount of time between games. But even Mario, I haven't really played a Mario all the way through in ages.
Yeah,
I
and I
can't
think
I can't
maybe
think of the last time that's it. I think this is something that just naturally happens. And, maybe in a couple of games, they repeat your interests and it comes back, or they take a
yeah.
break. Assassin's Creed's a perfect. I didn't play Assassin's Creed for like 6 games. I don't know how many games.
Mm.
Like I played 2, played the shit out of 2, and then was just like good. I was good for however many games until
Yeah.
like Odyssey I played on a whim because it was on sale. you know, and I really liked Odyssey. And then I played Valhalla because I liked Odyssey, and like Valhalla was fine. I liked it, but I'm good. I'm good on Assassin's Creed games for quite a while now.
Yeah, that's a good point. And some people are really obsessive with like sort of recapturing, that perfect period in their youth or whatever.
I
And
think all people are. I
uh,
am. I'm obsessive about that
yeah,
too.
but then there's also part of me that's kind of like I'm also ready to move on, I guess a little bit, where like Zelda was like Zelda was it for me. It still kind of is. Like, when I look around my room and I look at some of the posters I have and whatever, and I'm like, yeah,
Right.
I still absolutely, 3 Zelda, Link's Awakening collector's editions behind me. Um, I still do really like it, but like part of me is also like, it's okay maybe if it isn't the one thing. It isn't the 800-pound gorilla, the thing I want to see at every E3 kind of thing any longer. Like, and maybe that's okay. Because like another thing about Zelda too is that Zelda's not really like I know what I'm getting into because I've played so much of it, right?
Right.
I've
It's not
played so many
growing and
games.
changing in a way that it's gonna
Um,
surprise you.
right. And I'm
Yeah.
just sitting here looking at this little thing, and it just hit me too, where it's like, here's a near music box. I didn't know nothing about Near. I mean, I knew it existed before, but it's like when Platinum got involved, I got involved with Near, and it's like Near is a game that mentally challenges you, in a way Zelda would never touch, never dare dream of. And
Well,
maybe it's just kind of like,
Automata
oh,
is interesting because I would say that the combat is relatively simple and uh the gameplay loop itself is repetitive,
yeah,
I would say.
and like by
But
design,
but it does, if you're paying attention to the game, kind of pique your interest. It does. It kind of
yeah.
like makes you go, wait a second, what?
Now I'm not
Yeah.
saying Nier's better than Zelda, like from a critical standpoint. I'm not saying it's better, but it did something that, whoa, something I never thought about. It challenged your brain in a way a Zelda game never would. Like a Zelda game is about its puzzles. Like, what is Zelda's story? I gotta save the princess from the big evil thing, whatever. And not always. And I appreciated when Zelda wasn't that the most, but like it was kind of one of those things where it's like I discovered this other franchise that was doing other different things, and I was kind of more intrigued by it. It's like I need to go.
And now you want that from your old faithfuls in a way.
But I also know it's not going to do that. Like I'm never going to get a Yoko Taro written Zelda game.
No, right. I think that is sort of interesting because in my mind, as somebody like, I like Zelda, but I've never been like, it's never been like my thing.
Yeah, the
Um
game,
yeah,
the game.
and I would say that games like that, like where they're your thing and they become part of your identity in a sense, which is one of my favorite and also least favorite things about games. It's a fucking double-edged sword, right? Gaming was like, it became a part of, because you back in the day you'd get made fun of for
Mhm.
it. It became a part of your identity, right? You had the fucking Zelda. I'm wearing a Zelda shirt, but like maybe because it wasn't my thing, I don't feel as burnt out on it, as
Yeah,
I would.
yeah, and I
Um,
think that's super fair. Is that like, I enjoyed it casually.
yeah,
I still like it. I'll still but you're not like jumping in joy and anticipation for Tears of the Kingdom, but you never would have anyways. Like
right.
that
And I'm
because
gonna
you just
play it when it comes out, but I'm
because
not
you
like
come out,
dying for it.
yeah, you come out, you'll play, you'll enjoy it. Cool. For me, it's a little weird because this used to be like my obsession, right? Like I obsess over it every day.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
and let's all be real here. We all know what my current obsession is. And right now
games.
it's just with Xenoblade.
Oh well.
So that's like my current obsession. But like every time I think about why do you love Xenoblade so much, I'm like, I just love the idea that like someone started at the bottom, in the trenches of game development, and then he went on and he broke away and he tried to make his own thing, and it kind of bit him in the ass for a while, and he stumbled a bit, and then like he built him, and then he dusted himself off, and then he built himself up. He got lucky a couple times, really lucky a couple times, but nonetheless was just kind of like, I'm sitting here and I want to make these things, and I'm just gonna. The thing is, like, I've from what I understand too, like Monolith does not get huge budgets for their games.
No,
they don't. They
I think
actually
you've
get
said that in the
small
past,
budget.
yeah.
Yeah, they actually get relatively small budgets. And what do they? And so what do they do with it? Is they just spend it on the game. like,
Right.
like, okay, you're not going to get a lot of money. Can I still hire an orchestra? Can I still voice act everything? Can I still insist on not crunching my employees? I'll just spend it on outsourcing. I'll just do everything, to make it so that they're not working overtime, kind of thing. And like, there's so much like just appreciation. I think I'm more of a and such an admirer of like, because in the entertainment industry, as we've recently talked about, is how exploitative it is.
Oh yeah, it's
and I honestly think the best thing for the game industry, I can't say because I don't know a little bit, but I don't know the full inner workings of say like the film industry, but like in the game industry, honestly, I feel like the best thing to come out of people running these publishers is to have a guy who was a developer for a very long time be the one. But most of the time, if you're a developer, you're not a business guy. And you don't want to be a business guy. So you have no desire to put get in that position. People don't want to be in that position. And then it's so much so that like literally Nagoshi from Sega, the Yakuza guy, was like, why'd you leave Sega? Because they wanted to promote me.
Right. They wanted to promote me into
they wanted to promote me to be a vice president of the company, and I didn't want to do any of that shit. I just wanted to be involved in the development of the game. They wanted me to make business decisions on a company-wide level, and I didn't want to fucking do that.
Yeah, I understand that.
So, and it's like I totally get that. It's almost funny to think about that in a way where it's just kind of like, yeah, like sometimes even when they try to promote some of these people up, they don't fucking want it. They don't want to have nothing to do with this shit, and I don't even blame them.
You know what? I just realized something. You love Xenogears, and you constantly bring up
not Gears. Oh God, no.
Saga.
Yeah, that's the one.
But you bring up that like it's morally complex, and it's got like a moral gray area. And so
I'm a real weird fan of that.
Yeah, sure. It's the same reason why like I love Martin McDonagh. All of his characters are gray areas and messes. His whole movies are literally one big character moment. There's almost no plot. But the thing that I just realized is like the Yakuza franchise, they're all basically the same game.
Oh yeah.
Over and over and over again. And something I realized about it was for a lot of people, it's a comfortable sweater. Or it's like you can just turn your brain off and like enjoy this game.
Yeah.
That it's not going to surprise you necessarily. Not that the game's lazy by any means, just that like it's not going to do something that's going to like suddenly you've got to like really, you can come home from a long day, sit down, and you can play some Yakuza and you know what you're going to get. And what I'm realizing is Zelda might have been that for you at one point, and it's no longer that anymore. Now it feels tired in a sense, maybe. And so now there's this other game that like, is going to be good. Monolith Soft is going to make something good. And and it's got this morally complex layer to it. And so you can kind of like dive into it. Whereas now you don't dive into Zelda because you know what's coming. Yeah, Zelda doesn't surprise you anymore. And maybe that's a good point. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Making me. Whereas me, I haven't played every Zelda and I'm not burned out. Like I can still get surprised by it. And for millions of people where it's the first Zelda that they played,
their first experience,
Breath of the Wild 2, Tears of the Kingdom is going to be surprising for them. It's going to be surprising for me, but it might not be that for you anymore. And so maybe it's just like you need to take a break. You just need to like take a break.
I'm still going to enjoy it because it's been like it'll be like 6 fucking years between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
It's probably going to be pretty fucking good. Like,
I think it will be. I think it will.
There's
be
not really a Zelda game that is outright trash. right? There's not
outside the CDI, right?
Right. Well, yeah, but the CDI doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And the show, the glorious, glorious show, that's trash. But back to the point, like you're not like if you buy a Zelda game, if you spend $70 on a Zelda game, it's gonna be pretty good. Like it's not gonna like, maybe it's not the most groundbreaking thing every fucking time,
Yeah.
although sometimes it is. But maybe it's not the most groundbreaking thing every time, but it's gonna be pretty good. It's a safe bet for a good time. And again, for millions of people, Breath of the Wild fucking just blew their friggin' minds. Um, that's great. Personally, or not for me, I'm still down with it. But like, I haven't played. Probably there's got to be at least a quarter of the Zelda games that I haven't played, and like of the games I have played, there's only like 2 or 3 that I've played multiple times.
Yeah.
So it's different, right? It's not, I know people who have played going back to Yakuza, have played every Yakuza game multiple times and they still fucking love it. That sounds exhausting to me.
Oh yeah, totally.
But I've played most Resident Evil games multiple times.
Granted, they're a lot shorter usually. So.
They are a lot shorter, but I've played most. 4, we make jokes about this all the time, but 4 I played like 14 or 15 times.
And that is the longest.
It's the longest one, but I played the shit out of it, and it's still like I can go back and play it. And while now I used to have it memorized, now I do not. That shit's like in one ear, out the other now. Most games actually are for me. I don't know what that's about. I'm getting old. You hit 32, 33, and all of a sudden you're just all like, that was a great game. Walk into the next room. I don't remember a fucking thing. but like 14, or not 14, RE4, like I had it memorized and it was a comfort game. Like if I was just kind of like bored, didn't know what to do, I could hop in and, if I was really like, didn't want to have a challenge, I'll just put on infinite bullshit and burn through the game, because it was a comfort.
Yeah.
But that being said, like now that I'm older and like I can get more games, there's so many games out. It's also hard to justify replaying a game when there's so many games out.
When that backlog is huge, yeah.
And not only that the backlog is huge, but like games go on sale relatively often enough that it's like it's not even a matter of like, well, I'm not going to spend $70 on it. Well, in 3 months that game might be on sale for fucking 30, 40, even sometimes 50% off. And so there's so many games going that it's hard to get into a replay heavy circuit. Like it's just, I don't know how many times did you play Ghost of Tsushima?
All the way through?
Yeah. One time.
Okay.
And the same. And we loved that game.
I loved it. I can't wait for the sequel.
10 years ago, you love a game, you would have beat it, restarted it immediately.
It's true. But that's a big game, though. But I would have done that for
Right.
Zeldas and stuff. I did
Absolutely.
do it for Zeldas and stuff.
Right. It's a different world. I beat Village once. I beat RE7 multiple times. But that was mostly because I beat it on my stream and then we played it again, you and I streamed it again. And then I streamed it / played it with my brother again. But like most of the time, like I'm not going to replay it. And I love Resident Evil. Horror games are probably the games that I'll replay the most. I think I replayed Dead Space several times, but that was just, over the course of 10 years.
You'll play the remake, though.
Yeah, I'll play the remake. So it might just be personal burnout to where like you're just done with a franchise for a little while.
I don't know. It just feels like burnout's maybe the wrong word, but I think what you were saying is it's not surprising me anymore.
Right.
It's not surprising me. It's kind of become vanilla. It's become a little too comfort food, but like predictable.
Still good, just not your absolute favorite right now.
Yeah,
you're never gonna have a bad time eating vanilla.
Oh no.
Right.
So yeah, it's strange. It just to me, it's strange how much I used to love it, and now I'm just kind of like, it'll come out.
Let's close out with like, is there any other franchise like that right now for you?
Where I'm just
Or is it
over
specific? Like it's just like it's Zelda.
I think Zelda's hit the hardest because it was the most beloved.
Right.
So,
it was like the biggest part of your gaming life. Right?
Absolutely. And a lot of it too also comes from the fact that I'm way more acutely aware of who's making things. So, for example, if tomorrow Rare comes out and says we're making Banjo 3, I'm excited, but I'm also hesitant. I'm also like,
right, because none of those people are there anymore.
Yeah, none of those people are there anymore. So there is that, but I think Zelda goes a little beyond that, where it's because like Zelda's been changing hands, it's changed hands a lot. Like Love Twilight Princess was obsessed with that game, but that didn't have a lot of people from Link's Awakening. There was like no one there from that. So like Final Fantasy was kind of one of those where it just kind of like I just kind of realized like over time I'm like nothing's gonna be as good as 7. even though now I'm really excited for 16, so I've actually come back into love because of who's doing it. Where I just started to feel like nothing's really gonna be as good as that. Kingdom Hearts was a big one. I loved Kingdom Hearts for a little bit, and then I got kind of realized that like
it doesn't make sense.
This shit's like that's a whole discussion in and of itself, because I imported a PS2. I'm sorry, imported Kingdom Hearts 2 and modded my PS2 to play Japanese games so I could play Kingdom Hearts 2 early because I was so amped for it. And then it just sort of like hit me after I beat the game. I'm like, this shit's whack. this shit's really whack.
Fucking nonsense.
Fucking nonsense. Well, yeah, that, and then like I think just the sophistication of other games, and that's really gonna piss Kingdom Hearts fans off. Whatever. I don't really care about your opinion. But
how dare you?
But like the sophistication of other games, where I just kind of realized, like, why is Agrabah just like an empty city with all these little square hallways between empty stalls, like vendor stalls? Like, why didn't they actually use Kingdom Hearts as a means to expand the story and characters of the films that the films didn't have time to? Why is everything just like this sort of chopped down footnote 1/3 version of the movie that you just sort of play along with none of the pacing, none of the charm of the film? Like, I don't know. Like,
well, they're gonna fix it in Kingdom Hearts 4, 5, 4.
No, I don't know. Like, there's just this thing that just hit me right after beating 2, where I was like, this shit's whack, and it's just gonna get more whack. Like, this roller coaster of bullshit is not slowing down. I'm getting off now.
I had that same thing with COD, where I was playing the BR, the Warzone, and stuff like that. I got burned out on the multiplayer, and then I played the shit out of Warzone, and got burned out, and then I took like a year or 2 off, and then now I'm kind of like, okay, I'm gonna jump back into it. But even jumping back into this one, Modern Warfare 2, I feel like I'm sort of I'm going to be way more casual about it than I even was before. And I think it's similar to that, is where shooters are becoming very vanilla to me, where like shooters are the things that I played the shit out of the most growing up. And like I was always on the hunt for a good shooter.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if I've played a campaign as good as COD 4 since COD 4, except maybe Blops 2. With like the way it had like multiple endings and different outcomes to levels.
Well, the newest campaign is fairly good.
So I hear.
It's got some exciting moments.
I've heard mixed things, from it's okay to it's really good. Not bad. Nobody said it's bad. Some people are like it's okay, and then some people say it's great.
I think this one is better than the last game's campaign.
Vanguard? That's not. It's probably not too.
Oh yeah, not Vanguard. The last Infinity Ward.
Oh,
Modern Warfare
1 reboot.
Yeah, whatever. Fuck Vanguard. But no, I do think this one's better than the last one. This one feels more contained. The last one feels like it was trying to be like way more grandiose. This one feels like there's still grandiosity into it, but it's like it feels more contained. I don't know. There's also some they do some interest. I don't want to give you any spoilers because you might want to play it, and it's sort of like got some moments where you're like, oh fuck yeah. But it's got some moments where like you wouldn't have expected this to be a mission in COD. There's plenty of the old favorites like a ghillie suit, mission and shit like that. But then there's a mission here or there where you're just like, what? Oh yeah, I guess yeah, this fits. But it's like at the same time you're like, I wouldn't have expected this in a COD. So I do think it's pretty good. But I definitely was burned out on COD for a good while there, or maybe just shooters in general, where I didn't want to play shooters. I wanted to play literally anything else. There was a big Fall Guys moment for me where I got burned out on shooters, so I went to Fall Guys and your fucking various games like that.
Fall Guys was a lot of fun, and then I just had my fill and just never went back to it.
And I'm good, and I'm done. That's completely it.
I think maybe that's the moral of the episode, is that sometimes enough is enough. Sometimes you've had your fill of a game or a franchise, and there's nothing wrong with just calling it at that, calling it quits at that.
Yeah, I wonder. You gotta tell us in comments or on Twitter or something, like, what's the franchise that you're just like, I'm glad it's done. I'm glad it's done because now I can live in good times and I'll go back and play a game from it in a while.
Golden Sun for everyone.
The Golden Sun.
So that ended on a cliffhanger that'll never get resolved.
Yeah, well, that's upsetting. But at the same time, at least it's done on a good note. But as always, we've got some patrons to thank. If you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week was Francis. Thank you, Francis. And our producers for this episode are Screwnami, Croy35, Hyperviper89, Ziggy Z, and Online Persona. Thank you, dudes, and we will catch you next time.